Thank you for using our products. To access the Hawa Configurator, please go to our website at www.hawa.com. On the top right-hand corner, you will see an option for Hawa Configurator and Hawa Planning Tools. Under the Hawa Planning Tools, you'll see an option for Hawa Concepta and Hawa Folding Concepta. Please keep in mind that this is a planning tool for the second generation. If you are using the new Concepta 3, please use Hawa Configurator. The Hawa Configurator is only for the Concepta 3. Proceed on to select on Furniture. It'll take you to the next page, which you will select Hawa Concepta 3 family. And finally, you will see and you can select the version you would like to configure.
So right now, let's click on the far left one, which is the single door. And it doesn't really matter at this point whether you're doing a left or a right. All it's trying to show you is that this is for a single door pocket, just one. So we'll click on that, select it, and press next. Now is where you get to the handing, whether it's a left or a right. So choose your option. And we're going to stick with left for now. Now, once this page loads, the first thing you want to pay attention to is the type of image that you're seeing. So when you first get to this page, you'll notice that there is a 3D live view of your configuration. And this is just the default configuration for now, as far as the measurements go. So you can actually click on your screen anywhere here and you can rotate it around and look at what your configuration is going to be. Keep in mind, every time that you input a different measurement, this is going to change live. So one thing you want to take into consideration here is a different view. If you go down to the bottom left of your screen, there is an option for 2D view. Click on that, and it'll take you to where you see a front elevation, a top-down view, side views, floor plan views, different options to show you where these measurements are coming from. And this is probably going to be the clearest selection as far as understanding what the measurements are. So I would recommend going to the 2D view right away so that you have a better understanding of what measurements they're looking for. If you ever want to go back to 3D, just click on the 3D. It'll reload, and it should update to you the size that you have. Now, the first part of your selection process is what type of cabinet that you're building. This first one that says striking against the top and the bottom, this is a partial overlay. What you'll notice on our system is, and this is a common question, if you're looking at a front view of your build, the outer panel that forms the pocket, whether this is a standalone panel or adjacent cabinetry or even adjacent appliance, doesn't really matter. Maybe it's a wall niche, whatever. You're going to have some way to form your pocket, and that pocket size is always going to have to be the same size. So this outside panel here is never going to be able to be a true overlay. There are ways to make it look like an overlay. And if you need that type of configuration, give us a call, send us an email, and we'll walk you through what to do here. But for now, let's just go over the default setup. So this first option is a partial overlay, meaning it overlays the top and the bottom, and then potentially a side panel on the opposite end from the pocket. The next one is without the base panel. You'll notice that the options change here. So if you have, say, a floor to ceiling, maybe like a washer and dryer or some type of a tall cabinetry, broom closet or whatnot, this is going to be the option that you select. Again, this is a partial overlay, so you're overlaying the top of the cabinet here and then potentially the opposite side. The third option is what we call a composed cabinet. If you are in North America, I would recommend disregarding this option entirely. And the reason being is because this cabinet, maybe composed cabinet is not the best translation, but what they're trying to get to here is that you have a Concepta on top of another cabinet, whether that's drawers or a standard base cabinet or whatever your worktop area is down below, that you're setting your Concept on top of. The problem here is that it's limited to 900 millimeters, which is shy of what we're used to in North America at a 36-inch base height. So if you're trying to come in here and put a measurement in that is above that 900 millimeters, which 36 inches is, it will not accept it. It'll give you an error, and you won't really know what the issue is. So I would recommend avoiding the composed cabinet if you're in North America. The fourth option, just as it says, is an inlay door. So you'll notice that the door is shy of the top panel here and shy of the bottom panel. So just choose whatever option it is that you're going with, whatever type of build most closely represents what you're doing. Most of the time, I'm used to seeing what would be considered without base panel. So whether this is a floor to ceiling application or sitting on top of another cabinet, doesn't really matter. I think this is probably the easiest to use, simply because all you're really measuring here for is the pocket size, the depth, the size of your door, and so on. And you don't have to take into consideration this offset that's created here with another base panel. We can go over these different options in subsequent videos if we need to, but for now, let's just choose the cabinet without base panel, and we'll click on Next. Now, the options that it's showing you here are the push and pull variants of the hardware. The push version is the system that has the ejection operation from the pocket, and then also from closed position. So if you want your door to be flush when it's pushed into the pocket, with the edge of the pocket, this is a good option for you because you won't have a handle, and you'll essentially be able to push on the door once it's fully opened up into the pocket. You can push on the door and the hardware will eject the door out of the pocket for you. On the opposite end of that, if you do need a handle or you're designing for a handle, we recommend that you use the pull version. And the reason for that is because the push hardware has an ejection clip on it, essentially in the back, that grabs onto the stop plate. And if you're pulling on that rather than pushing and allowing it to operate properly, you can damage that ejector clip over time. So the easiest way to remember this is if you do not have a handle, likely the push version is best for you. If you do have a handle, choose the pull version. So we're going to go with the push for now, and we'll click on Next. Now we have two different options here. The one that I see used most is planning the cabinet from the outer dimensions of the cabinet itself. The other option that we have here that you can plan with is planning around your door size. So this is, again, dependent on what your situation is. If you know the size of your cabinet entirely, you want to choose the planning cabinet via outer dimensions. And if you know just the door size and you want to kind of finagle the size of the cabinet after that, then you want to choose planning around the door size. For now, let's stay with planning the cabinet dimensions. We'll click on Next. Now this is where we get into our dimension input. And essentially what we're going to do here is just go through what all of these different dimensions mean. So let me zoom out here again, get to another starting point as far as the view goes, the overall view. And you'll notice that as you change these sizes, the 2D version will also update with the dimensions that you're inputting. So the first one is the cabinet height. Now, you can zoom in here and you can see that this SH value is correlated to the cabinet height. This is just a standard variable that you might see in mathematics. Don't worry too much about what SH means, doesn't really matter. Just think of it as like XYZ when you were taking math in primary school. The cabinet height is really just the cabinet pocket, or the pocket that is forming where your door is going. So if you change this value, let's say we change it to 2 meters, you'll notice that it updates here to 2 meters for SH value. And you can think of this value here is also the measurement that's essentially going to be from the top of the pocket to the bottom, but more importantly, where your rails are going. So from the top sliding rail to the bottom guide rail, and that's to the furthest extent of those rails. So you'll input the value there. Cabinet width, SB. And again, don't worry about what the acronyms mean. So right now the default value is 600. Let's say we want to do 500. When you input that value, that'll update here. This is a value that is including the pocket. So you have to think of your cabinets kind of like a box within a box. Your pocket is one box, and then the open portion of your cabinet is the other box. And this cabinet width is the full width of that pocket and the inner cabinet. The next value here, I'm going to zoom back out. Next value you have for inputting is ST, which is the cabinet depth. Now, this is an important one, and you're going to need to make sure that you understand the difference of these values as far as where you're measuring from. The ST value you can see here on the left side is the full depth of your cabinet. So you'll notice that when you have any type of configuration, whether it's overlay or inlay, the inner pocket wall, the wall that forms the inner side of your pocket where the hardware is mounted to, is always going to be shy of the exterior panel, so that whenever your door is in closed position, it's flush with the carcass of your cabinet. And this measurement ST is the full measurement, the full depth of your cabinet for the deeper panel. So let's say we change that to 700 for now. That'll update here. And now the next measurement that we're looking for is the value for M. M, excuse me while I zoom back and forth here, M is the value that your door is sticking out of the pocket, measured from the other panel, measured from your shorter or more shallow panel that the hardware is mounted to. So if we want to extend the door out for some reason or another, we can manually change this to say you want to do 50 millimeters or 2 inches that the door is sticking out. You can do that and it'll update right here. If you want your door to be flush with the exterior carcass, you're going to change this value accordingly. Now, this is kind of where it gets a little bit confusing. So because your value is measured from the inner panel, you're always going to have an offset for M, or a value for M, because you're getting that measurement from the outer panel to the inner panel. And that is based off of the thickness of your door plus the gap that you have between the inside face of your door and the inside panel. So for now, we'll keep 22 because our default value for the door thickness is 19. And then the default gap that you see between your door and the inside face of your door and the inside panel the shorter panel, the default value is 3. So that's going to make it 22, right? So let's just leave that there for now. We're going to select pull this time. The next input is whether you want to plan via your plan from your cabinet dimensions or your door dimensions. We'll keep on cabinet for now. Then we'll go to the input values. And we'll zoom in here so we can get a kind of an overview of what some of these values are. Cabinet height, let's say, go back to 2,000 millimeters or 2 meters. Do a cabinet depth of, say, 500 again. Cabinet width, 500, 500 for both of those. And then we'll get to the M value. Your cabinet values, remember, your M value is measured from the edge of your inner pocket panel, not from the exterior or from the cabinet carcass. You wanted an M value of 100 millimeters from the edge of your door, or 4 inches to the outer edge, or to the edge of your outer panel. You would want to actually not do 100 millimeters for your M value. You would want to do 100 millimeters plus your door thickness plus the gap. So if you had a gap of 3 millimeters here, if you had a door thickness of 19 millimeters, that adds up to 22 millimeters, right? Well, your M value, if you needed a clearance of 4 inches here for your pull handle, would need to be 122. So if you wanted 4 inches here to here, you have to measure from the inner pocket panel. So keep in mind that whatever gap that you have here for your door thickness and your reveal, or your gap between there, this gap got to be added into that. All right. And that should give you the clearance that you need for the pull hardware. Next. Now here's where you get into your door thickness. So the default value for that is 19 millimeters or 3/4 of an inch. I'm actually going to change this to 25. Say we have a door that is an inch thick. We'll change that to 25, and then you can also select the type of material that you have. Now this is important. The type of material is important because the system is also calculating how much your door is going to weigh based off the material and the size that you're inputting. So let's click on MDF for now, just so you can see it change. And I want to go back to the previous measurements because we've now changed the door default value, or the door thickness value rather, the S input, to 25 millimeters or an inch. And that is going to, if you remember, talking about this a second ago, the door thickness and the M value, how they correlate. You'll see that you now have a not an error message, but just a warning message. The system has automatically changed your door thickness, or M value rather, because of your door thickness. So now that you have a door thickness of 25 millimeters and you have a gap value of 3 millimeters, it defaults to 28. If you want this message to go away, go back in here and manually change it back to 28 or whatever value that you're going to use, and you should see that message disappear. We'll click on next again, go back to door thickness. We got that input correctly. Let's move on to the next values. So you got your door thickness value, the type of material that you're using. Scroll down here and then click on next. And we're going to zoom back out a little bit so we can see some more of these values. Now this is where you're getting to the thickness of the carcass and the panels that form the pocket. So again, remember, the acronym that we are using here is not as important. Just think of it as XYZ. This is the AS value. This is the outer panel that forms the pocket. So whether you have a left hand or right hand pocket doesn't really matter. Just this is the outer panel that forms your pocket. If you have a build that is got adjacent cabinetry or appliances or whatnot, or even if it's your wall, this value is not really important. Don't worry too much about it. You can think of this. Uh, you can extrapolate this number later on if you need to. Just put in here whatever you're comfortable with, whether you want to use 19 or 3/4 of an inch or 25 millimeters, which is 1 inch. Sometimes I like to use the 25 millimeters or 1 inch just because it's easy in my mind to add or subtract the 1 inch from the overall build if you're not using that panel. So the AES is the outer panel or what might be your wall. The next one is BS, which is the other panel, the inner panel that forms your pocket. Let's change that to 25 as well. Say both of those are 1 inch thick. The next measurement is GS. We'll change that to 25 as well, just so you can see it changing. And that is the panel opposite the pocket. So if you have a single door pocket, whether it's left or right, doesn't matter, but this will be the panel that forms the opposite side of the carcass. Now, obviously, if you have a two-door system, left and right doors, then this will not exist, right? So we'll then move on to KDS, which is the top of the cabinet panel. I'm going to zoom out so you can see all of these measurements. And then if you come back down here on the same elevation we're looking at, but I just wanted you to see an overview. KDS is shown here as the top panel of your cabinet carcass. So we'll change that to 25 so you can see it updating. You'll see that updated to 25. So the rear panel thickness, let me go back to 3D view so everybody can have a better understanding of what this is. A lot of times this rear panel thickness may not really be something you're concerned with because you have the cabinet butting up to a wall or some other type of surface that your essentially your cabinet carcass is open to or open through to. But if you have a fully enclosed cabinet, you'll have a backing to that, and that is, if you kind of rotate your 3D view around, you can see that this 3D model has a back panel here. That's what this is looking for. It's looking for the thickness of that. So go back to 2D. You can see this measurement here, and this side back here, where you see the RE value, would represent what would be your wall or the backside of your cabinet. This here where it says RS represents where your inner portion of your cabinet is, whether you got drawers or shelves or it's for a washer and dryer, doesn't really matter. The RS side is the inside portion of your cabinet. So let's change that to, say, a value of 19. We're going to use a 3/4 back on that cabinet. That'll update to 19. Now, this is where some people get confused. This RE value. Sometimes you have an instance where your cabinet, you don't want the full depth of your cabinet. Maybe you've got pockets that are a lot deeper, or you have an allowance for pockets that are a lot deeper than what your actual cabinet depth is going to be. So if you've got a space that's, say, 36 inches deep, but you only want to do 24-inch deep cabinets, you'll have an offset there. And you can add that value in right here, up to 150 millimeters. So let's kind of play with this for a second. Maybe you want your offset on the backside to be, let's do 50 millimeters just for the sake of it. You'll see that this offset value, where this is measured from, is changing. If we go back to the 3D model, this is a better representation of these measurements. You can see how much of an offset for your back panel it now has. Now, if we wanted to do an offset of 19, the same thickness as the back panel, you'll notice that this back panel is now pushed back and flush with your cabinet carcass panels. Give it a second here. See, this is all flush now. So we'll leave it like that for now. Zoom back out for an overview. We'll click on Next. Now, this is the section where you're going to be inputting your reveals, your gap sizes surrounding the door. Your top measurement is represented by Z or Z1. So with an overlay application like this, obviously you can fully overlay that top panel, right? Well, you may or may not want a gap there. If you want a typical gap of, say, 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch, you can come and click on this value selector here, and it'll only let you select what is allowable within the range of the hardware. So, for example, you've got, say, you want to do a full overlay, you don't want to see that top panel at all, you would select 0, no gap at all, and you can see that that gap went away up here. I'm going to add it back so you can see it come back again. Select 1 for a size, and you can see that this Z1 value is now existing again. Let's play with this, and you can go up to 1/4 of an inch or 6 inches if you so want. But let's go back and select 0. Let's do a full complete overlay at the top. The bottom gap, Z2, is the exact same thing as the top if you had a base panel, if you had a panel down at the bottom. But more importantly, this is the offset that is between the hardware, the bottom rail, and the gap that you have to, say, the floor or the cabinet top or worktop or however your build is going. This one might be a little bit confusing because it only allows you to start with a value of 10 millimeters or just shy of 1/2 inch. You can come back in here, you can increase that to 30 millimeters, but most of the time we're used to seeing people wanting to push that hardware from the top to the bottom of what's going to be their pocket, whether that's floor to ceiling or that's on top of your cabinet to the ceiling or to adjacent cabinetry above. Just because this value says 10 doesn't mean you necessarily have to install your hardware this way. If you want to push your hardware all the way down to the bottom of your pocket and reduce that bottom gap as much as absolutely possible, which can be 0 if you so want, meaning your door can be fully overlaid on this bottom panel or bottom section as well. You can do that. We have other details for that. The system here just won't let you do that. So just do a value of, say, 10 millimeters if you want. If you want to keep something else in mind that's easy to add and subtract later on, you can do 12.5, which is roughly right at 1/2 inch. Or you can come to select, say, 25 millimeters or 25.5, 25.4 being exactly an inch. And then you can just keep in your mind that you're adding or subtracting that from the door height later on. We're going to stick with 10 for now. And we're going to move on to the next measurement. In this next measurement, notice we looked at this earlier, the Z3 measurement. We're showing it here. And this is kind of a little bit difficult to describe without another image here, but this is the measurement that you're getting on the left side of your door. So the pocket side of your door, I shouldn't say left, but the pocket side of your door. This is the gap that you're getting from the outer wall that forms the pocket or from your adjacent cabinetry to your door. Typically, we're used to seeing 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch there. So we'll put 3 in, and you'll see that this updates to 3. I'm going to find a little bit better view. Here we go. So we'll use this view here. The Z3 measurement, if you have your pocket, so this being your outer pocket wall and your inner pocket wall here, it's looking for this gap between your outer pocket wall and your door in closed position. That's what Z3 is. We'll go back to the detail here. You can see it again. Z4, the next input, is the difference that you would have between the edge of your door and your outer carcass panel. So how much your door is overlaying, fully overlaying the carcass. You may want a gap there, you may not. You may want to make that 0, and you'll notice that this measurement changes again and goes away. This is representing that your door is fully overlaying this outer panel that forms the carcass. This is what I'm used to seeing. People usually want a complete overlay. There's no gap there at all, and that's for a standalone cabinet. If you have adjacent cabinetry, you may want a gap there. You can change that back to whatever your value is. Say you wanted to leave it at 3 because you had cabinetry right next to it. We'll change it back to 3. You can see that value come back in again. And then we'll move on and we'll click next. Now this is where your, let's zoom back out so you can see an overview. This is where your selection for door straighteners is. This is just the colors of the door straighteners. We offer 3 different kinds of door straighteners. One being a regular plain aluminum anodized, another one being a raw aluminum. So it says aluminum, but just think of this as more of a raw aluminum or paint grade aluminum. You can select that as well if you're going to paint over those to match your door finish. Or we also have a black anodized aluminum as well. These are just your color selections. And whether you choose, regardless of which one you choose to use, doesn't really matter. We highly recommend using door straighteners on any Concepta configuration because if your doors are bowing at all, it's going to create problems for adjustment problems later on. And whether you use our door straighteners or somebody else's doesn't really matter. But you're going to want to keep in mind that the documents our system provides are specific to our door straighteners. If you're buying somebody else's door straighteners, that's fine. You're going to want to use their information for how deep to mortise that hardware and where to position it on your door. Again, like I said, our door straighteners and what's provided here are specific to the door straighteners that we manufacture and sell. Click on next. All right. Now this is getting into what types of files you want. The 2D installation plan is a series of documents along with the PDF installation plans as well that it provides to you that is specific to the sizes you just input. By default, these are selected because this is what everybody typically wants. And I'll show you these files here in a second. There's another 2 that are automatically selected here that you cannot unselect. The parts list and a table with different values. And these values are all based off of your input as well. The final option here is a 3D step file or an STP file. So if you have a system that can accept STP files or STEP files, then you'll want to click on this. Just keep in mind that when you click on this, the system will take a little bit longer because it is generating values specific to your system. So when we get through and we get done here in a second, and you input your contact information because it's going to send you an email, just keep in mind if you select a 3D file, you may want to give it another 5 minutes because it takes just a little bit longer to generate. We're going to click on next here. It's going to ask you for a name of your configuration. Doesn't really matter what you input here. You want to say Hawa training, or you want to say, something specific to your project. Doesn't really matter. Just input whatever you want here. And this is just an identifier for you when the stuff is printed off. We'll click on next here. The final input that you're going to put in here is your email address. Now, this is required because, as I mentioned a second ago, the system is going to send you an email with these files on here. We're going to input my email address, which is eric.aiken@hawa.com, just so that it's in the system. You click on next. And then you have the final selection box, which is just, I accept the terms and limitations of what this system is providing you. Now, when we first started off, one of the dimensions that we changed, the M value or the door thickness value, when we changed the door thickness value, that automatically went back and changed the M value. What you'll notice sometimes is when you're going through and you're inputting your sizes of your cabinetry, and your door size, that the system will automatically change in some cases other values because what you're inputting for that current value may change. Like, say, for example, the door and M value is a good one, a good value that it automatically changes. But when you change, like, say, your door thickness, that M value is also automatically going to change. Remember when we changed our door thickness value from 19 or 3/4 of an inch to 25 millimeters or full inch, and that automatically changed the M value from 22 to 28. So just keep that in mind. If you have a error message, or not an error message, but a warning message that pops up right here, you'll have two checkboxes. And all that's trying to say is that, hey, we changed the value. Do you accept that value? You'll click on, yes, I accept that value. And then you'll also click on, I accept the terms and conditions. And then you'll click on generate data. If you don't want to click on the warning message, you can, like we did earlier, go back and manually change that value again to what the system will accept, and it should get rid of that warning message or the error message there. You'll click on generate data. It's going to tell you that it's going to send you the information. When it sends you an email, what you're going to get are 2 to 3 files, depending on what you selected. So 2 files if you did not select the STP option, and 3 files if you did. You should get an email that looks like this from Hawa Configurator, and it'll have these files in here, and it'll have a kind of a generic message, thank you, so-and-so. And then you'll see your PDF file, your STP file, and then you're going to see a zip file, which contains CAD files or DXF files of every piece of paneling that you're going to need to make, and the positioning of the pilot holes where the hardware goes. So let's take a look at the PDF file. This is the file it's going to send you by default after you input your values and input your contact information. And it'll give you a 3D view, which is true to size. It's not scaled, it's just true to size of what you input. It'll give you a parts list. And keep in mind, these are our part numbers. So if you're buying through a distributorship, you might have different numbers that correlate with these. This is showing you the values that you input. This is showing you the estimated weight of your door in kilograms. And then we can start getting into the cut sizes of the hardware. It's going to show you again the 2D image that we were looking at earlier. It's going to show you all those images again with your specific values. And then from there, it's going to start showing you all the different measurements that you input for your reveals, for your door size, for your cabinetry, your pocket panels, whatnot. It's going to show you an image for each one of those and the placement of the hardware. So this should be very clear on how to construct your cabinet around the hardware. And then you'll also notice here that this is showing you the door with the straighteners attached to it. And this is where you got to be careful. It's showing you the depth of those cuts and the width of those cuts as well for the straightener. So if you're not using our straighteners, keep in mind that you need to look at that manufacturer specific instructions to cut your door, not ours. The CAD files, if you open that up, oops, I'll change the view. Sorry about that. The CAD files will have one per piece of paneling. You can open all that up as need be. We're not going to go through this for now for this video, but you'll see a description of what each file is and how that relates to what piece of the cabinet that you're then making and where the hardware goes. All right. So that's pretty much it for the single door pocket